It's time for the Property Podcast, where every week tens of thousands of property investors, new and experienced, join together to get news, knowledge and laughs at our expense. With me, Rob Bence.
And me, Rob Dix. Join us every Thursday morning for your weekly dose of property ideas and motivation. Then head over to our website at thepropertypodcast.com to keep the conversation going. Now though, let's get started.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Property Podcast. I'm Rob B. With me is Rob D. And we are on episode 122. 122. Yes, we are smashing through the episodes. Rob, we've had a busy old week, haven't we?
We have rather. Lots coming up. Coming up next week, we've got a couple of really big events. We've got the Property Hub meetup happening next Thursday, which is now sold out. We've got a bit of a waiting list there. If you're on the waiting list, you might get lucky, but that's massively oversubscribed. We've also got the Property Hub Summit coming up next Saturday, also sold out. Really looking forward to that one. So yeah, it's been a hectic old time preparing for those, but it means that we have to venture out and meet people, which is actually my favourite part of doing all this, is actually not just sitting here talking into a microphone, but getting out and seeing people and hearing what they've been up to. So I'm very excited about what's coming up. Absolutely. And actually, we need to say hello to a few new people, Rob, because we've got 2 new starters at Yellow Lettings, 1 new starter at RMP. So hello to Andrea at RMP, who's going to be working in client services. And at Yellow, we've got Mo and Nigel, who are our reps on the ground. More about them in the future, I'm sure, but just hello and welcome to the podcast, which you're now forced to listen to. Yeah, so even if everyone else stops listening, we'll have a decent-sized audience just from the team. It's contractual.
Yeah. I would tests every Friday morning. Right. Okay, so next in the podcast, the news story of the week. Now, Rob, because we are recording this slightly earlier than we normally do, we're about to hear the budget, but it hasn't happened yet in our world as we're recording this. So we'll talk about more about that in the future. But what we do know about is our book on Amazon, Property Investment Tips, is still going all guns blazing. And in fact, incredibly, it has now more reviews than any other property book on Amazon, including many that have been out for years and years and years, some best part of a decade. And it's already in less than 4 months got close to 200 reviews. So that is absolutely incredible. We're not leaving the reviews. We're not forcing the staff to leave them. It's you. So thank you so much for supporting it and getting behind it. As you know, we don't make any money from that book. It's just put out there at cost. So we hope you enjoy it. And actually, Rob, it's been in the top 100 business books since its launch. And it's still currently ahead of books like 4 Hour Workweek. Have you heard of that one?
It rings a bell, yeah.
Richard Branson's autobiography, currently ahead of that. Familiar with that guy? So yeah, absolutely bonkers. We always set lofty goals, but this has even surpassed our most loftiest goals with the book. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for that. Really exciting to see that, and really exciting to see the number of new people it's brought over to the Property Hub, which is ultimately what it's all about, because the more people in there, the more opinions, the more information, the more that everyone can share, and everyone can get smarter. So that's exactly what we hoped would happen and exactly what has happened. So it's absolutely brilliant. Speaking of getting smarter, we should try and impart some knowledge in our topic of the week. And this week we're talking about how to find a property sourcer. So before we get into it, let's start at the very beginning with what is a property sourcer. Some people will know exactly what that is, but it's not. As we were discussing before we hit record, sourcer is not a real word. Spell check always tries to underline it and tell you to change it to something else. So it's not a word that you're necessarily going to understand. A property sourcer is essentially anyone who will go out and find property deals on other people's behalf. So they may buy for themselves as well, but in their role as a sourcer, they're going out identifying opportunities and then passing them on for a fee rather than buying them themselves. That's what a sourcer is. Why would you want to use them? Well, there's a couple of reasons. For a start, they might have access to deals that you don't, because they're going to be out looking all the time. They're going to have avenues for exploring and networks that you won't have. And also because you might not have the time. If you're investing in property part-time, you just want to buy 1 or 2 a year, you're maybe not going to be able to get out and see that much property if you're busy with your full-time job or your family or whatever. That's what a sourcer is and why you'd want to use one. Now you know what one is and why you might want to use one, you'll need to know how to find one.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to give you 5 ways you can find a property source. So we're not going to just give you one, we're going to give you 5 ways. And then we're going to give you 5 things you should be looking at before you work with one. So it's all well and good finding one, but you need to know what sort of checks you need to put in place before you start a relationship with them. So we're going to look at 5 things first. Now, Rob, did you get that £10 through the post?
Okay, so number 1, use a property investment company like the check hasn't cleared yet. I'll say it anyway. RMP. Property sources come in all different shapes and sizes, from big companies down to individuals. Rob and I were actually talking to someone just last night. Hello, Ollie, who's come to a Property Hub Summit in the past, and he's thinking about becoming a sourcer himself because at the moment he's out there finding more deals than he can do on his own. He would just be a sole trader, not really doing it as his full-time gig, just a little bit of extra, but still a sourcer. Then you've got lots of people in the middle, and at the other end of the scale, you've got property investment companies, where that is what they do, and they have a team not just looking for the deals, but also helping you with everything that it takes to go through as well. Even within property investment companies, there are big ones, there are smaller ones, there are ones who work to a certain model, there are ones who will basically flog anything, there are good ones, there are bad ones, there are all sorts. But RMP, of course, is one of them who lots of people listening will have had experience with.
Yes, and jokes aside, the 5 things that you should do before working with one that we're going to go through in a bit is something you should do as well. Just because I'm on the podcast doesn't mean you bypass those checks. And just because somebody's on, say, a recommendation from us, then you still should do these checks. And that's actually the next one in our list, is ask for a referral or recommendation. If you know somebody who's working with a sourcer, ask them, would you recommend them? Would you work with them? Would you suggest these are good for me? Also, if you just see somebody who's buying a lot of property, inquire a little bit deeper. Are they using a sourcer? Again, find out. They might not mention it. They might be keeping their stuff private. Lots of people do with property. But actually, if you let them know, hey, I see you're doing a lot with property. Are you getting these yourself, or are you working with someone? Most people are more than happy to share, the details of people they're happy to work with. So number 2 on our list of 5 ways to find a property sourcer is ask for a referral. Ask people who are already working with a company or looks like they're doing a lot in the property investment world. Ask them how they get their properties, and hopefully you'll get a good recommendation.
A third one is to go to networking events. And this is particularly good for finding the smaller sources that we were talking about. Not the companies who are going to be out there proactively looking for you and maybe have some kind of marketing budget, but just kind of the individuals who do a bit of sourcing. Networking events are great for those. I think we kind of rip on networking events a bit sometimes because they can be kind of like a pitch fest. You can go there and get lots of people thrusting business cards at you. Not all networking events are like that, of course, but the fact that people are there kind of actively trying to make contact with each other locally and make you aware that their service exists is no bad thing in this context, because you do need to be out there, especially if you're looking to invest in a particular area rather than just looking for a deal wherever in the country that happens to be. That can be super useful. And of course, just to rip on networking events a bit more after saying I wouldn't, you do get all kinds of characters turning up to those, meaning that the 5 things that we're going to talk about where you can actually validate whether you should be working with that person is really important.
However, Rob, we have to say that the networking events for the Property Hub are very friendly and non-pitch fest-like. So don't be afraid to go along to those. In fact, people aren't, because they always get sold out. Next on the list, another one you have to be careful of, but you can find sources there, is LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, if you start connecting with property people and joining property groups, so if you don't use LinkedIn, you connect with different individuals, but you can also join groups, and there are property groups that you can join. Now, in these property groups, I'm not active in them, I'm in a few, and I see the posts come up now and again, but I do see a lot of people posting, either asking for deals, or posting saying they have deals available. Now, remember, you have to be very careful with this, but it is a way of at least finding an introduction before you start doing your checks, of finding different sources. There's a few ways, as you can see, they're starting to build up now. You can find them. There's not just companies or individuals at networking events. You can use LinkedIn and ask for referrals too. But LinkedIn, you do see deals offered, and you do see people requested deals as well. So if you're after a very niche type of deal in a certain, maybe it's a very specific area, or it's a very specific strategy you have, then LinkedIn might be useful, because you can blast it out there across the different groups and see what answers you get back.
And the 5th way is the Property Hub. And if I may draw an analogy, I would say that LinkedIn is kind of more analogous to going to a networking event. The people in LinkedIn groups are often pushing deals out there. They're looking for you. Whereas the Property Hub is more like kind of just getting into a conversation with someone, seeing what they're doing and being like, oh, I'd like to know a little bit more about that. So when we were talking to Ollie the other day, who's looking to get into sourcing, one of the things I said to him was, if you want to find people who would be interested in buying the deals that you're selling, get on the Property Hub and talk about what it is that you're doing. Share your results and you will get people coming to you. We don't allow advertising on the Property Hub, but you can always private message people if you've made more than 10 posts. So that means that if you see someone who's doing things that look interesting to you, either because of the results they're getting or the way they're doing it or the area they're doing it in, you can message them and start a conversation. And it may be that that person does a bit of sourcing, or it may be that they can pass you on to someone who does. But either way, it's a brilliant way of getting introduced to what it is that that person does, and also to lead you on towards some of the checks that we're talking about, because you've already seen that that person has some kind of credibility. They're clearly not fly-by-night because they're there with their real name, posting on a forum, talking about what they're doing. So the Property Hub is growing fast, and I think it could be a really useful, non-threatening way to go out looking, because I must go and find a sourcer kind of feels like a bit of a task. But by doing it on the Property Hub, it can just kind of happen naturally while you're reading, learning, posting, and so on.
And also be aware that, yes, people can direct message you, but people will never sell to you. So you're not going to get people going privately, oh, I've got this deal, you're interested. That is also banned. As you know, I run RMP, but I don't know advertisements from RMP even on the Property Hub. It's education. That's what it's about. But if you like the education and knowledge that people are sharing, you can contact them. So it's a win-win. You can learn, and if you like them, you can go to them. But you won't have the people pitching you. It's the perfect scenario, so that's why the Property Hub is so good, if I don't mind saying so myself. Right, okay. The 5 things you should do now before working with one. Actually, this is probably more important than the 5 ways of finding it. In fact, it is more important because you can find a property sourcer. As you said, at networking events and LinkedIn, there's people who will be more than happy to take your money and give you a property. But are they worth working with? So the first thing you can do is check if they're registered with the Property Ombudsman. This is not just for bigger companies. Yes, RMP is registered with the Property Ombudsman, but so should anybody working in property sourcing. It doesn't cost a lot of money for an individual or a company to get registered. So if they're not, why not? Because it just gives you some basic protection. It won't fully protect you, but it gives you just a bit extra peace of mind, that extra little bit of security that, these people at least are doing the bare minimum of what they should be. If they're not doing the bare minimum, then why? Check that out, push them on it, and if they don't come back with a good answer and they're still not willing to get registered, then maybe walk away from that relationship.
Another thing to do, sounds basic, but Google them. And as we've said before, not just page 1, but because they might have pumped that up and managed to get some good results on there, but keep on going, do the first 10 pages. Especially useful for companies, maybe less so for individuals. For individuals, see if you can find someone who knows them and can vouch for them in some way. So that's where things like LinkedIn and Facebook can be quite useful, because you might either have someone approach you or you might find them. And it's like, okay, well, they're making some claims, but what are they like as a person? If you can connect with them on LinkedIn and see that you've got some people in common, you might be able to go to them and say, okay, well, what's this person really like? So Google them for companies, Google individuals as well. But also you might turn up more if you can have a little look on LinkedIn and see if you can find someone to give them an endorsement.
Okay, next up, sounds a bit crazy because why wouldn't they? But find out if they invest themselves. Push them on it. Ask them, okay, so what investments have you done personally? And if they sound a bit vague or they say that they don't invest at all, then alarm bells should be going off. It's like somebody who works in a restaurant who doesn't eat their own food. You've got to find out why. And personally, if they don't invest themselves, then I'd be reluctant to work with them. The majority of people at RMP are investors. We've got investors in yellow lettings. It's something that we like to see, in the people we work with. Not everyone, but many of them. Obviously, Rob and I invest ourselves as well. Imagine us doing a property podcast and we didn't invest. It'd be crazy. But actually, there are plenty of sources out there who source property and actually keep it quiet that they haven't done any investments themselves. So just push them on that. It's a simple check. And it's one that you can quickly rule people in and out if you're going to work with them or not.
Absolutely. And connected to that, number 4, ask to see examples of past deals. These could be deals that they've done themselves or deals that they've passed on to other people. But you want to see proof of what it is that they can do. So it's all very well to say something like, oh, I've got this opportunity. It's really worth this, but I'll give it to you for this. And once you've done this little bit of work, it'll value up for that much. And anyone can say that. Maybe you can assess for yourself whether that's true or not, but maybe you don't have the knowledge and the experience to know either of the market or the amount of work needed to know if that's true or not, which is why you want to see examples of past deals where it's actually all done and dusted and you can see whether that was borne out or not. Any decent sourcer will be able to show you past deals. If they can't and they're making excuses, that is a very bad sign. You should be seeing past deals, and ideally they should be willing to put you in contact with the person who ended up doing that deal so you can make sure that it's true. If they'll tell you where it is, you could even go and look at the sold prices on Rightmove and stuff to make sure that it is true. But you should definitely, at the very bare minimum, be seeing kind of deal sheets for things that they've done before, not just things that are coming up, but things they've done in the past. Obviously, past performance is no guarantee that they're going to be able to repeat it, but it's an absolute minimum.
Yeah, you want to see a track record. If they haven't got one, then that's a big alarm going off again, and another reason why you should walk away. Another thing to be wary of is make sure they understand your strategy. So many sources and property investment companies make this mistake. They go, okay, so how much have you got? Oh, I've got 40 grand. Great, I've got this deal for you. Whoa, okay. That deal might be right for you, but it might not. If they haven't worked on your goals as a minimum, preferably gone a bit deeper and worked on your strategy, then how do they know it's a good fit for you? They're just trying to flog you a deal. Now, you could flip this around and say, well, that's up to you to decide whether it is or not. But really, the only person that's definitely going to benefit from that deal is the sourcer. What you want is a sourcer that understands you and your plan, so they bring you deals that match that criteria. You still need to check them out, but what it'll do is 2 things. It will make sure that they are focused on you and your needs, but 2, it'll also reduce the amount of properties you'll see from them because they shouldn't be then sending you stuff that doesn't match that strategy. So make sure you have a chat with them first. If they're not asking to do this, then but you want to work with them, then push it on them. But make sure they understand your strategy. You don't necessarily need to build a strategy with them, but at least have them understand what you're trying to achieve, so you'll have a better working relationship. Otherwise, if they don't seem interested in that or they're reluctant to do it at all, then again, that's probably another reason to walk away because they're probably just money hungry and don't care about you. So make sure they understand your goals and your strategy.
Definitely. It's something I heard on an American podcast. I can't remember who said it. He'd say to people, I want to have a relationship with you for a year before we do any business together. So we get to know each other and see how each other operates before any money changes hands. Is that always realistic? Probably not. A year is quite a long time. But I think the principle behind it is quite important because it means if the person just wants to do a deal right now, then they're going to lose interest. And you don't want to be working with someone who just wants to sell you something today, not knowing whether it's right for you or not, and then move on to the next one. And it also means that you do have some time to start to understand how each other works and understand the strategy, so they won't be putting things to you that aren't relevant. So I don't know if it's realistic all the time, but I like the principle of it, and it's very much linked into that last point.
Yeah, you can do tests, actually. This is actually quite naughty. And you can ring up a property investment company or a property individual and go, right, I've got 40 grand. What have you got for me? You know, I'm looking to invest soon. If they start going, oh, I've got this deal, that deal, then, you know, you've kind of discovered that they might be that type of person. So, you know, it's a bit of a cheeky trick, but you could try it, you know, go to the company, right, I've got this amount of money, I want to see some deals today. You know, if they start throwing deals at you, then, you know, that might give you an indication of the type of relationship you're going to have. You know, or are they going to go, no, wait there, let's slow down, let's look at this, let's build a relationship first.
Sneaky. I like it.
Sneaky. You can try out on my team at RMP and let me know if they fail. Okay, so Rob, 5 ways to find a sourcer. You can use property investment companies, you can ask for referrals, go to networking events, check out LinkedIn, check out the Property Hub, of course, but then make sure the checks are in place. Look at a property ombudsman, Google them, dig deep, find out if they've invested themselves, ask for examples, and make sure they understand your strategy. Is there anything else you'd add?
All I would add is that might sound like quite a lot of work, doing all those things. But if you can get it right, if you can find that right person or that right company, it could really supercharge your investment, because it's like anything, isn't it? It's like with property, you can do everything yourself if you want to. Apart from the legal side, you could sit there and you can go through all the mortgage tables and try and figure that out. You can go and do your own DIY. You can do it all yourself, but you're ultimately going to get further if you have people who are better than you at each particular thing doing that job for you. Sourcing is no different from any of that. If you're in a position where you can go out and view a load of properties yourself and you love doing that, then absolutely do that. But not everyone is in that position. A lot of people listening to this podcast are really excited about property. Maybe they'll have started, maybe not, and they'd love to do more, but time and other commitments are holding them back. In that scenario, a property sourcer can be really useful because they can get out and use time that you don't have to find opportunities that you couldn't find. So although it seems like, I've got to go and do all this digging around and I've got to do all these checks, yeah, it is a lot of work and there is no guarantee of success. But if you can start building those relationships, it could really make a difference. But I'd put a massive emphasis on that second part, the things to do before working with one. If you're going to split your time, spend 80% of your time researching the people you found rather than looking for them in the first place. Because if you are hands off, if you are less experienced, there's no shortage of people waiting to take advantage of that. So it's worth investing time in finding those right relationships and making sure that you have a good experience.
So hopefully you found that useful. Remember, finding one is not the end of the journey. It's doing the checks as well. I know we've kind of emphasised that, but so many people get financially ripped off by dodgy people in property. So it's just making sure that you do those checks. Doesn't mean that you won't get in trouble when it comes to the deal, but it's going to massively reduce it if you're working with an ethical sourcer. Right, before we do our resource of the week, which is a cool one, I want to do our review of the week, and it comes from Ash. So a big thank you to Ash, please. Ash says, if you're reading this before listening and trying to decide whether to bother, I urge you to do it and start with the episode about valuing your time. I promise you won't be disappointed. These are not only easy to listen to, but they're also easy to understand. The Robs are very engaging and clearly very passionate, which combined with the huge value of information they dish out, is very inspiring. As I wrote this, I've just finished listening to episode 103, Saving the First Deposit, and that's exactly where I am on my investment journey. A great show, guys. Please keep them coming. Well, thank you, Ash. We do appreciate it. So now it's time. It's time for our resource of the week, and it's called Smart Record. No, this has nothing to do with podcasting. Smart Record is an app that I've just started using on my phone. Now, I'm one of these people, like many of the listeners, and I know Rob is too, that gets inundated with emails, requests. It just doesn't stop, which is fine, and it's great, especially when it's from people from the Property Hub or people I'm working with or so on. That's cool. But I'm the type of person who prefers audio, but you didn't guess that. Okay, so the app that I've recommended this week is an app I've started using recently. Now, it's only on iPhone, unfortunately, so I do apologise to Android users, but I'm sure there's something similar. And this app for iPhone users is called Smart Record. Now, there's plenty of recording apps out there, which is fine. But the reason why I like Smart Record is for a few reasons. First of all, it's really easy to use, which is great. And there's a paid version and a free version. Obviously, the free version is a little bit more limited, but I'll tell you what's involved. When you record a message, you can then instantly, you don't have to go out and clip it to anything, you can instantly send it to your email, to someone else's email. If you use HipChat or Slack, some of the things we've mentioned previously, you can send it directly there. If you use WhatsApp or any of those type of social media apps, it can be sent straight there. You can also have your message transcribed into the written form. So if you just want to record your message, then have it transcribed and then sent to someone, that's possible. So it's really, really good for people who find typing and writing challenging and laborious. If you prefer just to leave a quick audio note, then this is ideal. Maybe you work with different team members, and instead of writing them a long email, you can send them just an audio message to get your message across. There are so many different uses. You just need to start being creative with it. So check out the free version's there, but there's also the paid version too if you want some of the extra features. We'll link to it in the show notes, of course. And this week, the show notes, you can get all the links and information at thepropertyhub.net/property sourcing.
Just to add, if you are an Android user, so you don't have access to that And if you're an Evernote user, you might not realize that you can actually record voice memos in that. It's probably not as comprehensive and doesn't have all the features of Smart Recorder that Rob's just been talking about, but it is there. I'll also say that it does transcribe, but it's really, much as I love Evernote, the transcription isn't good for much other than comedy value. Whenever I've used it, I'm not a big voice note taker, but when I have, I'll often kind of look back at it about, was I on drugs? But then I'll listen to it as like, oh, okay, actually the message was fine. It's just that it's just done a really bizarre transcription. But if you want to laugh or it's in a pinch, you might want to have a look at the Evernote functionality. I believe you can use that in their free version.
So that's us for another episode, 122. Next week, 123rd episode. I'm sure it's going to be a cracker. But until then, everyone, have a wonderful week. And bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Property Podcast. Make sure you join our mailing list at thepropertypodcast.com.
And remember, we love 5-star reviews. Rob even loves them more than air miles.